Welcome to our chat today. I'm here to fulfill a request from some of you, which is to comment on the 7 laws of the Kybalion as seen from my perspective. I decided to do this because a number of people started asking for it, so I resolved to have a little chat just to encourage you to also look from this perspective that you have before you, which is your life, and to identify these 7 laws within it. This idea was born, you might remember, when several people started asking why I believed in something that didn't clearly cite its sources. And there are many documents throughout history that don't clearly cite sources. The only way to confirm them is to look through the window of your life and see if life corroborates them. In other words, a spirit of experimentation, of living experience, which is very healthy within philosophy. By the way, it's an important tip for you before anything else. When you suspect that something has depth, but it holds some value, something read in a book, preferably a classic, it's interesting to carry it with you through life. The moment you observe a fact that truly corroborates this, that confirms it, only then does the knowledge become yours. And from the moment the knowledge is yours, it becomes a solid foundation for you to build upon your own things, your own ideas. So, it's very important to occasionally open this window that looks out onto your life and start searching around. What underpins knowledge? Or what doesn't underpin it, which can also happen? Then you start to realize that the teaching has flaws, it's not very well balanced. However, look with a clear mind, free from dogmas or preconceived beliefs. Otherwise, you will influence the experience to either confirm or deny it because you have already believed or dismissed it beforehand. That's not philosophical. That's why I always reiterate, the philosopher is not the owner of the truth, doesn't possess the truth, but is in search of it. Any preconceived notion you hold will already influence your perspective. In other words, I am testing this knowledge in life without prejudices, postconceptions, reflections that come after, not before. So, speaking about the Kybalion, these are some very quick and simple reflections. The principle of mentalism, for example. Mentalism, what's interesting for you to observe is, it doesn't mean thinking that the power of the mind changes everything. It's not about that. But you can observe, in a very concrete way, that your mind creates an environment that tremendously influences you. In the same way that feng shui suggests the color of the bedroom walls where you sleep can influence you to sleep well and wake up well, too. The mental environment you create will have a great influence on your day. So try, for example, when you wake up, to have a positive morning disposition. Whether it's through a beautiful melody you play on your bedside table, or through a short reading, you create a mental environment. The environment is not just physical, it is also mental. And given how scattered we are, sometimes the environment is more mental than physical. In general, I think we are more in the environment created by our mind than in the external environment. So it's interesting, create a condition, a present landscape. It's what the ancients used to call getting up on the right foot. This means stepping into life with a positive disposition in the sense of today. I will do noble things. I will do elevated things. I will fulfill my purposes. I will tell the world that I am coming. I will deliver my message. It's not about just saying everything will be all right. It's not quite like that. What does all right mean? All right, by what criteria? Today, I'll manage to impose my will on the world, no matter the circumstances. It's not a matter of luck. It's about being faithful to principles and will. So, you realize that sometimes we do the opposite. We set ourselves up to fail. It's the pessimist, it won't work, it won't work. And he just goes there to confirm that it won't work, and generally, it really doesn't. And sometimes the opposite happens. Also, that person who has a predisposition, it will work, and everyone says, there's no way it will work. And he makes it happen. It's not a matter of luck, nor if it is mine that shaped the circumstances. The circumstances that were shaped became your own tools to fight against adversity. as long as it takes until the door opens. So, every morning when you think about your day, this is related, even to the principle of vibration, which we'll talk about shortly. When you set your mind to resonate with higher things, with a greater sense of life than what you want to convey to the world today, it tends to give a very good initial boost. And everyone knows there's a certain power in beginnings. For those who study public speaking, for example, if you start a speech poorly, it tends to create a negative predisposition for the entire talk. Because your mind tells you you are doing something poorly. It creates a very unpleasant environment. You can recover, but it becomes much more difficult. So, we learn from what was traditionally called the magic of beginnings. In other words, it's a good practical application of mentalism. Or think about my day, or remember who am, or tune my mind to something noble, something elevated. It's a very practical application of the principle of mentalism. Regarding correspondence, it's also very easy for us to notice this. There are countless circumstances. You will probably think of things even more diverse and perhaps even better than these poor and simple examples I am giving. Imagine, for example, when I stop to look. The principle of the center. All the galaxies, all the constellations, revolving around the constellation of Virgo, that is, this supercluster in which we live. Then, within our own galaxy, everything revolves around a center. Within the solar system, everything revolves around a center. You realize that within us, psychologically and emotionally, it's the same thing. You will see that, from a mental standpoint, from the perspective of life's purpose, there is a center, which is what you aspire to become. In talking about patterns of achievement, not success or anything like that, but the human being you want to become at the end of it all. What you want to see when you stand before the conclusion of your work in the world. In other words, the construction of oneself. If you have this very firm principles, and you know the message you want to convey to the world, how much you want to benefit life, how much you want to be a contributing factor to human life, that is a center. And you feel that all your actions become coordinated. Everything revolves around that. You don't lose yourself. That's what we call being disoriented. Disoriented is the person who no longer knows where north is. Or he doesn't even believe that north exists. He ends up with a chaotic movement that, in the end, doesn't add up in any direction, doesn't move him in any direction. What's most curious is that those who don't have a center, don't have a sense of self-construction, don't have an ideal, don't have a clear sense of life. They live in chaos and make chaos their law. And they tend to be a bit critical of those who have a valid sense of life. Once again, I reiterate, be careful. In speaking from a philosophical point of view about the sense of life related to the human being you want to become, not about the success or fame you will achieve. That, from the philosophical point of view, is a secondary element. It may be pleasant, but you can live perfectly well without it. But without leaving some flaws behind, as Seneca used to say, make sure to see some of your flaws die before you do. At least one or two we should bury before we finish this journey. That, indeed, is a valid sense of life, the construction of oneself. If you don't have this focus, if you don't have the center, everything starts to move in a chaotic manner. And those who lack a center, they celebrate chaos as a law, and made up those who do. This, from a mental standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, even. From an emotional standpoint, there's another thing I do like to draw attention to. I am a mature person. I'm 55 years old, and more I realize one thing: the emotional center, the sense of home, the place around which our psyche revolves, the place around which our emotional life revolves, that balances us, that grounds us, is those or that which I love. You'll notice that at a certain age, there's not much curiosity left. It's not very variable. This matter of age depends on the maturity one has acquired throughout life. There comes a certain moment when you realize that the best place in the world, is the place where the people you love are. It's the place where you do the work you love. It's the place where you make your contribution to the world. That wild curiosity, okay, they'll go here, they'll go there, meet people, and so on, but everything starts to look very similar at a certain point. Various things with different appearances, but at the core, the same theme. And the only unique place, the center, around which we revolve, is those or that which we love. That is home, the best place in the world. So we notice that person who once had a dream, wanted to live in a certain city, went there, and couldn't bear the loneliness of being far from everyone they love. And no matter how wonderful the place was, it's never as wonderful as our fantasy builds it up to be. And it doesn't make up for the fact that we're far from what we've built emotionally. Deep down, the center of our emotional life. It's the amount of deep, true love that we manage to build. In other words, everything within us also has a center. If I descended to the physical plane, I would also see a center of balance for the vehicles, a center of health. Our physical, psychic, and spiritual life also revolves around a center. This is a good application of the principle of correspondence. Take a look. See if it's not the same in your life. The third, which is vibration, this one is more than characteristic. Many times I've had the opportunity to be with people who are good people, living ordinary lives, but they have a common habit. A habit. Ah, that's nonsense. That's just a pastime. It's nothing. You notice that, in moments of pressure, that vulgarity she cultivated comes to the Iona. That little point she left there without working on is a possibility that her psyche will visit. It's not in the moment when she needs an answer and thinks she doesn't have one. So you realize that the vibration cannot be too divided, spread across very disparate levels. The vibration, which is what you identify with, needs to be more or less all on the same level. An interesting thing, I recently talked to you about The Lion King. Maybe you haven't stopped to notice an interesting element in that movie. From all that complex plot, with all that, of disasters that happened, who is the big culprit? Everyone is going to say it's Scar. No, it's not Scar. Scar had his character flaws since he was born. It was predictable. Everyone saw it. The great responsibility there lies with Mufasa. Do you know why? Because he allowed evil to live within the heart of good. In other words, he exposed his entire kingdom to danger, including his own son. Why? He made a concession for purely personal reasons, which is not acceptable for a king. He allowed evil to live within the heart of good. So, this issue of having very coarse vibrations within higher vibrations, you'll notice that life will end up creating a middle ground. It will end up dragging you down. In other words, the principle of vibration requires you to be in tune with nearby elements. In other words, what I like. Things that make me reflect, things that encourage me to be a human being. Better, things that show me the need to dedicate myself more to the cause of my life, things that provoke me, a state of harmony, that provoke a state of relaxation. I like things that uplift me. No, but there's this little exception. Well, this little exception is going to create events in your life. Notice, observe. That's quite easy. Take a look at the people around you, but not with a critical tone. It's for you to detect the element, because it's easier sometimes to see things projected than within ourselves. And then look within yourself. Harmony. Everyone there, more or less together, at a vibrational point. Consciousness refuses to descend once it has reached a certain level. Don't force it. Let consciousness remain in its seat, which it has earned by merit. Another interesting element. Its polarity. This is even more observable. You notice that everything that starts off too intense soon swings to the other side. It can be relationships, it can be friendship, it can be a dedication to something. There were missing steps. In other words, there wasn't a knowledge, an approach, a deepening, a slightly more gradual contact. Consciousness didn't go through the rites it needed to fulfill. She made a leap. This leap lacks support, therefore, it might fall at the same speed. So it's a very common element that we'll see, that friendships, loves, activities fulfilled us. Sometimes, in my practice as a teacher, this has become more or less habitual. Of course, there are always exceptions. You see, sometimes in the first philosophy class, there's that person who's vibrating, overly enthusiastic, saying, "I'll spend my life here, I found my place." The next day, she comes bringing all her belongings from home, wanting to put them inside. In other words, take it easy, take your things. Everything in moderation. We don't need things, we just need you to grow. Be careful with that, because in a week it's likely to cool down and swing to the other side. That person who rises more calmly, who sometimes gains that enthusiasm by the 20th class, when the course is ending, has the possibility of establishing a more steady behavior. I know that these sudden passions are a source of pleasure, but they are not a good foundation for something you intend to commit your life to. So, it's neither prudent nor sustainable. Do things hold back the passion a bit and build an entire foundation for it? Notice, it's our psyche that has this tendency, swinging from one side to the other. Try to find the golden mean. This is nothing more than the principle of polarity. The principle of rhythm. How many times do we notice that when they try to hit us, they don't catch us because we're not on that level, which is the matter of neutralization? Remember? The world is a polarity. It's like children fighting over a teddy bear. If you don't desire the teddy bear, you're on another level, and you can reconcile that level. It's very common, for instance, that when someone arrives, sometimes at a conference, sometimes in a class, they arrive with a certain prejudice against philosophy, wanting to attack something. There's only one way for a teacher not to feel attacked. When he is not identified with his personality, he is speaking on behalf of something greater. They attack his personality, but he's above it, looking down with no interest. Do you know why? Because he is not doing it to project his personality. So, this sense of generosity, of giving, it takes him off the level where he can be hit. So, it's you this year that I probably am. But still, I have something to give you. Do you want to receive it? In other words, a depolarization of that plane where the polarities are happening. And you realize that they no longer affect you. The same thing, I've noticed this in some other lectures in sports championships. When none of the players are from your team, not from your country, you no longer feel any passionate involvement. You evaluate the technique of the game better. You see the beauty of the player's technique better. You have a cooler head to see the skill, to see the art through soccer, or any sport for that matter. Because passion is not present. When there's passion, you identify with one side, and you no longer see quality, you don't see talent. Yours is the best, and the others must be defeated. So, this is a curious element for us to observe. A judge, for example, would necessarily need to have this neutralization. No emotional involvement with either side, no predisposition to think that one side is always right and the other is always wrong, which is a complex aspect of the human psyche. No prejudice, no predisposition. This is this, and this category is always right. This is this, and this gender is always right. Whatever it is, any predisposition will tilt the balance a bit. In other words, you have to neutralize and place yourself on another level of consciousness. Constantly, you see this need within social life. You see this need in yourself. When, for example, you judge your child's fight with a strange kid at school, don't think that the best thing you can do for a child is to take their side. The best thing you can do for a child is to stand on the side of justice. This requires neutralization. That's the example they need. Cause and effect. This is also very easy to see. Pause to think in the midst of a tough situation you're experiencing. Try to pinpoint in the past where the generating factor of those consequences was. What was the attitude towards life? What was the trait of temperament that I realized needed to be corrected? And that element comes to hit exactly on that edge so that I can polish it. Sometimes a difficult relationship, I don't know, having a difficult father, a difficult mother, and you realize that the fact of having lived with this difficult person prevented you from becoming like them, had an inadequate response to life. If that hadn't happened, maybe today you would be even worse off. So, relate and find in our past the causative factor. It's another bold experience that I propose to you. I always say that an interesting thing is to keep a journal. It's really worth it. Not to say what you did during the day, but to position yourself in relation to your human ideal and see how you are moving towards it. Try to think. Write in your journal at night about how your day went. Try to think about what the future holds for a person who had a day like this, who had this type of attitude, this type of thinking, who made these kinds of choices. You realize it's something predictable. You can see it, you can know it. It's an interesting thing that sometimes a mother is mature enough for this. Today you can't even talk about this because there's a lot of prejudice that sometimes the son or daughter comes with their boyfriend or girlfriend and she spends a little time there and she clearly sees, look, from there such and such problems will arise in the future. For the couple, for coexistence, why? She knows that nature doesn't make weights. She knows that for something exceptional to happen in the future, the seed of the exceptional must be present now. If they aren't there, they will have to be built, they will have to be planted. And if there isn't maturity from both to plant, it will head in a direction she can already clearly foresee. In general, a mature mother is not surprised by the outcome of a relationship that did not turn out as well as she had hoped, because she already knows a bit about this mechanics of cause and effect. Therefore, she already sees in the present the seeds of what will bear fruit in the future. It's a matter of reflection. For there to be something exceptional in the future, the seeds of the exceptional, it has to be here. If they aren't, what will there be in the future? What is here? What are the seeds I have in my hand at this moment that I planted today? It's really worth reflecting on this. It can be a bit scary. But if you can detach yourself and make this projection, you can even avoid complicated things. Having a change in attitude, learning from the future before the rise. With a bit of reflection, you can do this. It's not some paranormal power. Finally, the issue of mental gender. Every now and then, in that same journal, try an experiment of looking within yourself to find out what ideas, what emotions, what feelings are truly yours. Within the principle of gender as a whole, the mental gender is where we can most see experiences in our daily lives. In other words, you can even start doing something I also recommend, which is also a good thing to do in a journal, a jewelry box. What do you put inside this jewelry box? Thoughts and feelings that are truly yours. Cultivate them with great care. This here, I believe, you know why. Because I lived such an experience, reflected on it, and came to this conclusion, and this is an idea of my own. This feeling is truly mine, you know why. I looked at this person without any prejudice, without any mass trends, without any fads. I observed her reactions a bit. I had the courage and impartiality to do this, and I deduced that this person might not be worthy of hatred, but rather of compassion. Perhaps they are not worthy of passion or idolatry, but just a little admiration, a great understanding. In other words, the feelings that are yours, the thoughts that are yours, keep placing them in a jewelry box, keep valuing them. Because this will lead you to increasingly practice seeking the root of your thoughts and feelings. And start practicing fertilizing your own mind with your own ideas. Anyway, this is a little game. As I said, it's just the start. You can search in your life, through your window, in every possible way. It's very difficult for someone to tell me these things that you saw and you didn't see. I saw, I lived. So, is this a foundation? It is a foundation. It's a solid foundation. It's the experimentation of everything I read. I take something seriously when I experience it and see that it has a foundation. Before, it was just a possibility. It seems considerable to me, not just by experiencing everything as well. What seems sensible and considerable to me is a possibility, and now it's a confirmation. And that's how you reflect, that's how you learn, that's how you build your own identity. That's it. I leave this suggestion for you. A lot of reflection, a lot of learning. Thank you.